Have you ever felt strangely disconnected in the middle of a conversation? Like you're playing along with something that doesn't quite make sense? Have you ever wondered why people seem to try so hard to fit in, even when it costs them their authenticity? Have you ever sensed that most social interactions are more performance than connection? If so, you're not alone. And more importantly, you might not be confused. You might be awake. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, often called the philosopher of pessimism, observed this with striking clarity. The sharper the mind, the more it notices what others are willing to ignore. And that noticing comes with a price, because the more you understand, the harder it becomes to participate in what feels like a collective illusion. The irony? The more intelligent you are, the more alone you may feel. But if you felt this way, maybe it's not confusion. Maybe it's clarity. Part 1. Why intelligence and social conformity collide. It's a common misconception that intelligent people are antisocial, but the truth is more nuanced, more psychological. The issue isn't a lack of social skill, it's a heightened sensitivity to social dynamics, and an acute discomfort with inauthenticity. Highly intelligent individuals tend to process information at deeper levels. This includes not just abstract ideas, but social behavior. They notice patterns others overlook. Body language mismatched with tone, flattery hiding manipulation, or conversations that revolve around nothing, but still demand emotional performance. This brings us to the concept of social scripting. The implicit rules we follow in social settings: what to say, when to laugh, how to respond. Most people follow these scripts unconsciously, but intelligent minds often find them stifling, even absurd. They question, why are we pretending to care about small talk we both find meaningless? Why do we smile when we feel disinterested or disagree? And then there's emotional labor. The effort required to manage feelings, suppress reactions, and perform emotional expressions deemed socially acceptable. For intelligent individuals, this often feels not just exhausting, but dishonest. Over time, they may begin to mask, not as a form of deception, but as self-preservation. They play along, but only on the surface. Internally, they withdraw. The more aware you are of these layers, of posturing, of performance, of empty ritual, the more alienated you may feel from it all. It's not that you dislike people. It's that you crave realness, depth, nuance, sincerity. And when those are missing, interacting starts to feel less like connection and more like choreography. And once you start seeing through the surface, something else begins to change. Part 2. Solitude is not isolation. It's inner strategy. There's a profound difference between being alone and being isolated. Yet in a world that prizes visibility and constant connectivity, we've learned to fear both. Isolation is disconnection without agency, a feeling of being cut off from others against one's will. It's painful. It's passive. It leaves a void. Solitude, on the other hand, is a deliberate act. It is chosen. And when embraced with clarity, it becomes one of the most powerful forms of self-possession. Schopenhauer put it starkly: solitude is the fate of all great minds. Not because the intelligent disdain others, but because they understand something most don't. That depth often requires distance. That clarity demands quiet. History confirms this. Leonardo da Vinci didn't discover genius in group consensus. He withdrew, obsessed over anatomy, invention, proportion. Not to escape society, but to build something greater than it. Nikola Tesla, known for his brilliance and eccentricity, rejected public life in favor of mental focus. His solitude wasn't exile, it was strategy. Søren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, walked the streets of Copenhagen alone, writing in silence about the inner self, while the world called him mad. What these figures shared wasn't misanthropy. It was what psychologists today call intentional solitude. A conscious decision to step back from external stimuli in order to cultivate inner clarity, originality, and insight. This kind of solitude is not about escaping others. It's about reclaiming yourself. Because constant exposure to noise, social, digital, performative, erodes our sense of internal authority. We begin living reactively rather than reflectively. Solitude corrects that. It recalibrates the signal-to-noise ratio of the mind. It restores thoughtfulness, vision, and independence of thought. And ironically, the more rooted you become in solitude, the less lonely you feel. And something powerful happens when you stop chasing the crowd. Part 3. When you stop seeking acceptance, you become irresistible. There's a paradox most people never realize until they experience it firsthand. The less you seek acceptance, the more magnetic you become. At first glance, it sounds contradictory. Aren't we wired to belong? Isn't connection essential? Yes, connection. But approval seeking is not connection, it's performance. And people can sense the difference. When you stop needing to be liked, when you no longer edit yourself to fit in, you begin to radiate something rare. What psychologists call status independence. It's a quiet inner stance. I don't need validation to know who I am. This is what makes people pay attention, not because you're loud or charming or agreeable, but because you're anchored. In a world of social chameleons, stability stands out. This is also what we call quiet confidence. It doesn't seek to impress. It doesn't over-explain. It simply is, and that calm self-containment has gravitational pull. Why? Because most people are subconsciously trapped in the social script. They strive to be liked, to say the right thing, to align with the crowd. Not out of belief, but out of fear. So when someone appears who doesn't play that game, who walks away rather than compromise, who doesn't chase, but chooses, that person becomes a psychological anomaly, and anomalies trigger curiosity, even admiration, but also discomfort, because your refusal to seek validation challenges the very structure others depend on. It mirrors back their dependence, and that can feel threatening. You become, in their eyes, both intriguing and unsettling. The irony? You didn't try to attract anyone. You simply stopped betraying yourself. And that's the ultimate reversal of power. Not in dominating others, but in no longer being dominated by the need to belong. But why does that freedom intimidate others so deeply? The answer lies in silence. Part 4. Silence in a world addicted to noise. We live in an age that fears silence. It's not just that we avoid it. We've built an entire culture around escaping it. Social media, push notifications, endless content, news cycles engineered for outrage. All of it designed to hijack your attention, flood your system with dopamine, and keep you perpetually stimulated. This isn't accidental. It's neurological. Each swipe, each click, each reaction, a microdose of validation, a hit of novelty. And like any addictive substance, the more you consume, the less you feel. Psychologists now speak of digital overstimulation, a condition where the brain becomes so accustomed to constant input, it forgets how to sit in stillness. It loses its ability to reflect, to integrate, to think deeply rather than react quickly. And here lies the danger. In a world addicted to noise, stillness feels like suffering. That's why silence makes people uncomfortable. It's not emptiness. It's a mirror, reflecting everything the noise was helping them avoid. Schopenhauer understood this long before the age of smartphones. He withdrew from social life not out of contempt, but out of necessity. Because he knew that clarity requires distance, and that the noise of society doesn't just distract you, it dilutes you. Silence, on the other hand, does the opposite. It concentrates, it purifies. It allows thought to unfold in its full complexity, free from performance, urgency, or interruption. In silence, you begin to hear your own voice again. Not the conditioned responses of society, but the raw contours of your independent mind. That is why thinkers, artists, mystics, those who shape the world rather than conform to it, so often retreat into silence, because silence doesn't numb the mind, it sharpens it. And once you've tasted that clarity, the ambient noise of modern life, be it superficial conversation, manufactured drama, or constant distraction, becomes not just irritating, but intolerable. And once you've tasted the clarity of silence, the noise becomes unbearable. Part 5. Fitting in is the most dangerous addiction. From a young age, we are taught that to belong is to survive. Say the right thing. Wear the right clothes. Adopt the right opinions. What we're rarely told is that this message isn't cultural, it's biological. The human brain is wired with a deep, primal sensitivity to rejection. Long before modern civilization, being excluded from the group meant death. Today, that danger no longer exists, but the fear remains. Neuroscience shows that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. It hurts not metaphorically, but neurologically. This is why we conform. Not because we agree, but because we fear what might happen if we don't. It's why we laugh at jokes we don't find funny. Why we stay silent when we should speak. Why we tolerate superficial friendships. In exchange for a sense of inclusion that feels increasingly hollow. And this is where the addiction begins. Because the more we chase belonging through external approval, the more we abandon our internal truth. And yet, the reward system of the brain lights up. Every like, every nod, every unspoken agreement reinforces the behavior, even if it chips away at our authenticity. But here's the difference intelligent minds begin to notice. Fitting in is not the same as belonging. Fitting in is performance. Belonging is resonance. One demands you shapeshift. The other allows you to stand as you are. In a society obsessed with cohesion, authentic connection becomes rare. And those who refuse to fake it are often labeled as antisocial, difficult, or cold. But maybe what they really are is awake. Awake to the cost of conditional acceptance. Awake to the emptiness of performative connection. And that's when it hits you. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to find your own path. Part 6. Solitude as power, not punishment. Solitude is often misunderstood. It's seen as a lack, a symptom of social failure, emotional withdrawal, or even arrogance. But for the intelligent, solitude is not a punishment. It's a requirement, a foundational condition for clarity, depth, and original thought. Profound insight, true innovation, and creative mastery don't emerge in crowds. They arise in silence, in the undisturbed space where the mind can stretch beyond performance, beyond approval, and touch what is real. That's why the greatest minds in history did not fear solitude. They sought it. When others chased applause, they retreated into focus. When the world demanded conformity, they answered with introspection. Their strength wasn't volume, it was intention. It was precision, built slowly, invisibly, until it could no longer be ignored. Think of the ancient Eastern sages, like Lao Tzu wandering alone in the mountains. They did not vanish because they had no role to play. They vanished because their role required discernment. To act only when action had meaning. This isn't misanthropy. It's not rejection of humanity. It's the rejection of distraction, of dilution. Solitude is not isolation. It's selective engagement. It's choosing who enters your space, what ideas occupy your mind, and when your energy is best spent. The powerful don't avoid others because they can't connect. They do it because they refuse to fragment themselves. They protect their inner world, not to hide from life, but to move through it with purpose. Because what silence births cannot survive in the noise of performance. Now that you see the truth, what will you do with it? Silence is power. Now that you've seen through the farce, can you still pretend? Can you go back to laughing at empty jokes, to nodding in hollow conversations, to shrinking your truth for the comfort of those who fear depth? Because once you've tasted solitude, not as suffering, but as clarity, you realize something unshakable. Silence isn't emptiness. It's pure presence. It's power. The power to hear your own voice. The power to stand firm when others sway. The power to choose when to engage and when to walk away. So if this message resonated with something you've always felt but never put into words, leave a comment below. Silence is power. Let that be your declaration, not to the world, but to yourself. And if you're ready to stop betraying who you are, just to be accepted by people who never really saw you, then subscribe. This space isn't for everyone. It's for those who would rather be real than be liked. Because in a world addicted to noise, your stillness will disturb. Your clarity will confront. Your authenticity will stand out. And that's exactly what this world needs more of. Not more followers, but more free thinkers. You've felt it your whole life. Now, own it.